Hello everyone, and welcome to NINJAGOCast. I am your sensei, Wolf.
I'm LJ.
I'm Meso.
I'm Sakota.
And I am privy to this disaster, also known as Starbreaker.
So what exactly happened?
Let me explain why we're laughing.
I'd love to know.
Hopefully, first of all, YouTube chat, let us know if you can hear everyone, including LJ. Please let us know before everything goes wrong again. So I have it on my phone open, and I'm staring down at my phone where it's messages directly to LJ for him to tell me to go.
Haley!
Look
Haley!
up. I see
We're
that I'm
podcasting
added on my laptop.
I'm using the TTV chat for the podcast!
You know, I see that now. I see
Yes,
it now.
do you?
They're just awkwardly sitting there like...
I'm listening.
I'm literally looking down. I'm looking at like the face of Garmadon on my phone in LJ's DM, and I'm like, here we go. I'm waiting for the go. I'm waiting for the go.
Bro.
It's funny because I also saw the notification on my phone saying that the podcast had started, and I was like, it's going to be any moment now.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Anyway, we're glad you all are here.
I love it. I'm so happy to be here.
All right. I'm just gonna start looking into like, what are they called? Audio boards? No, that's not it. What are they?
Soundboards.
Soundboards. Thank you.
Soundboards.
Because this is
that'd be interesting to have.
We've had one. The problem. So for anyone that doesn't know, we haven't had a working soundboard in. It's over a year now.
Yeah, that's true.
The reason for that is because our last one, something happened to it, to where it
braked.
It basically the audio is terrible.
Yep.
It causes the audio to crackle.
Oof.
So
It causes the audio to craggle.
Last time I remember you guys talking about a soundboard was there was the "I'm LJ" gag that was spanned throughout the entire episode.
We love LJ Bot. Yeah, no, it's not good.
Yeah, we'll get it fixed in like
Eventually.
10 years. But until then, we have it's been a while since NinjagoCast. You may be wondering, man, they're doing a lot of NinjagoCast even though we have no news for Skybound and there's no new episodes and, fill in the blank. Well, there's still news for Ninjago and there's still a lot going on. And we're going to have a lot of these kind of pop in here and there. But today we have a few things to talk about, but the biggest one being the newest reveal from Skybound Comics, and that is not Skybound Ninjago Skybound. There's actually a company named Skybound Comics, and apparently they're huge. This is actually the first time I've actually heard of them, so it'll be good to get into that discussion. But before we do that, how's everyone doing? It's been a hot second.
Before we do that, fill in the blanks. Podcast hosts. You know what comes first. Say it with me. Plugs.
All right. Well, we're the TTV channel. You can find us on Twitter at the TTV channel.
Sensei.
You know what, LJ, you got this.
Okay,
Go.
it's all right. It's all right. I got this. It's actually been a long time since I did the plug, so let me.
I'll do the plug.
Hey! No.
I actually remember this stuff.
Okay, go ahead. Let's see it.
All right. If you'd like to subscribe to us on Patreon for as low as $1 a month, you can do so at patreon.com/the TTV channel. As a perk of joining, you can join our Patreon Discord server, and you can be in the video's chat box, as well as play our Minecraft server on the island of Motanui, with more to come. Additionally, you can check out the TTV message boards at board.ttv channel, where eventually, maybe one day in 10 years, we can get the polls up and running for the contest. Please stop messaging us about it. We know,
we'll get it.
We know we're going to do it.
Get the polls up for all the people that deserve it.
I promise. And you can participate in Bionicle Ninjago Lego discussions over there. And additionally, if you'd like to follow us on Twitter for any late-breaking video announcements, sometimes very late-breaking, you can do so at twitter.com/the TTV channel. Thank you. And take it away.
All right. Well, the first thing that I'm going to note for here is we've got a wonderful guest with us today. You've seen him on other podcasts, but I believe this is the first time he's been on a official reggae NinJagoCast. Is that right, Zach?
I'm sorry.
Rick.
Since reggae, it's not shorthand for regular. Reggae is not.
I'm dying.
I think this is the second or third NinJagoCast I've been on, actually.
Oh, really?
Wait, really? I know I've been on at least one other one. It's been a while, but
I know you've been on like a quote unquote brick feed / NinJagoCast, but actually
I know I've been on one of those too. But I think I was on a single regular NinJagoCast.
I think the last one we did with X with the set discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe so. Even still, Zach is completely caught up on Ninjago.
Oh yeah,
so
indeed. So we got him here today to talk about some fun comics and some other, stuff that has to start with the B word for Lego. You'll know. Oh, yeah. We'll get to that.
Bionicle. Wait, we're getting G3.
Oh
G3.
Why didn't no one tell me about this?
No, G3 was Ninjago all along. Just didn't know
G3 confirmed. G3 confirmed.
But yeah, we're great.
Statement?
It's nice to have you here, Zach. But yeah, how's everyone doing?
I am all right.
Good question.
All right.
Next question.
I feel like this is one of those beautiful disaster podcasts where us talking coupled with later in the evening, podcast, coupled with it's been a while since we did a podcast, coupled with all the technical issues is creating a loopy mindset.
Yeah, coupled with all the candy we had last night, because last night was Halloween.
Dude, I'm
so
still
we're on our sugar lows.
I am a hyped up on candy corn. I got it running through my veins.
I was at work. I worked until 6 a.m. and then stayed until 7:30. I didn't do anything.
Stop lying. We know you're a regular party animal.
Oh, yeah.
I watched the Braves get a grand slam by my favorite player and then lose the game. So
I left out a bowl of allergy-free candy outside my door because wanted to do the whole didn't want anyone coming up to my door, being around people, COVID exposure, yada yada. I left the candy in a bowl outside my door with a sign. I was like, you know what? Take 2. Happy Halloween. I check outside this morning and the bowl is gone. Not just the candy, but the bowl.
See, that's so funny because I have heard that meme before where it's like if someone sees a bowl of candy, you just take the whole bowl. I've never heard it actually happen until just now.
Took my bowl.
I thought you were going to say nobody took any. I'm sad, but no, that's better. That's way better.
Not for me, because I was hoping for the leftovers, and also I need that bowl. It's my mixing bowl.
You'll buy a new bowl.
If you're listening to this podcast and you stole a bowl from Zach, please return the bowl as well as a few of the candies, because
right. We'll get a crowdfunder up for Zach's bowl.
There we go.
Get Zach a new mixing bowl Kickstarter.
Thanks.
Pledge $20 or more and you can get a picture of the bowl mailed to you. $30 or more and you get an NFT of the picture of the bowl.
No, you're done.
Moving on.
$50 or more, you'll get the NFT as well as a signed replica of the bowl, signed by yours truly.
Thank you both, Mr. Faber.
You do $100, you get a bowl signed by the bowl.
I am all about creativity.
A bowl inside of a bowl.
All right, but we're not here for bowls.
Russian nesting
bowl. That's what that one person dressed as a hippie did last night when they went up to Zach's door. No, we're here for some ninja, or more importantly, for some Garmadon. Yeah.
We're not here for any ninja.
We're not here for ninja today. We're here for the man, the myth, the legend, the emperor, the lord, the sensei, the whatever he was in the movie Garmadon, which was announced this past week to get his own set of in-canon official comics from Skybound Comics.
Can we talk about that announcement real quick?
Yeah, well, let's talk about how they announced it, because they
the announcement's pretty cool.
And they did like a full-on like panel, and they had some of the greats there, you know, the Tommies, a lot of the writers, the editors, the people who did the stuff behind the scenes. They even had the writer of the first full Lego book. I forget what the name of the book is called. I'm so sorry, Dan. And then they also had a podcaster there too.
Yeah,
who was the podcast?
A podcaster. Okay,
they had a certain podcast.
Let's talk a little bit about that, though. I got an email one day through the Lego Master Network. For those unaware, I'm the ambassador for TTV through the Lego Master Network. So I represent the channel to the company. And they come to me and they're like, "Hey, LJ, how you doing? You know what? You're great. You're awesome. Anyway, we don't want you. So can you?" They asked if I could give them the contact information for quote Sensei Wolf from NinJAGOcast. She had been specifically requested by the Lego team because they listened to the podcast and they heard her, and they were like, "We want her to be the fan rep on the panel," which is very well deserved.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, you know. It's one of those. It's like in that moment, I was the face of the Ninjago community, and I hope that I spoke true to the hearts of Ninjago fans about, you know, the announcement of it being Garmadon and it being canon and what that means to us as fans. But it was a absolute honor to be there and to be among the greats. And I am sure as well. Oh, I am sure, along with the whole community, we are pumped for what they have in store for us.
I'm sure the whole community is very pumped.
Oh yeah,
minus some cynical people out there.
Minus some cynical. Well, I mean, I'm sure we're pumped for the story, for stuff that they're doing with Garmadon. Garmadon is, you know, he's such a well-crafted character. You can easily do him wrong, but they did their research and they took their time with him. They've worked with Tommy Calamar, who got information from Tommy Andresen, so they're gonna. I have a feeling they're gonna do him justice. So it's gonna be a fun time. But they did that announcement on the 29th. Skybound Comics, for those who don't know, is an official comic company. They are the creators of The Walking Dead and Invincible, among with other names in the comic world. Of course, those two being like their big hits. Yeah. Which actually I didn't realize until the day of the panel that The Walking Dead was based off of comics. I thought it was the other way around.
Oh my goodness.
That was fun to hear about.
That is rich.
Yeah. I even said that in the YouTube chat, and someone was like, at me, "You're not that bright, huh?" And I was like, oh. Like, I know The Walking Dead was filmed in my state. I just assumed it was like that was its own property, and it didn't come.
Like got a comic.
And now it's connected. Like it's the same company that's now working on Ninjago stuff. So it's
pretty funny.
Pretty cool.
It's a similar feeling I had to when like DC Comics did like the Bionicle stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "Oh, that's weird." Small world.
Weird. Small world. Does that mean that they could like show up in like the new Warner Brothers game or something like that because they're somewhat connected? Like,
well, it's weird. It's weird you mentioned that. Not in that way, but there have been instances in like DC Comics, where Bionicle iconography has been.
Oh, that's weird.
It's been
There's some reference
spotted in a Green Lantern.
Canon in the
No, it's like it's more like just a reference, but they're very overt. Like there was a Green Lantern comic where it's like, I mean, it's literally Lewa. Actually, wait, no,
that was a character named Stell, and I think he's
it wasn't
around longer than Lewa.
Never mind, it wasn't that. It literally is just a Toamata in a Green Lantern comic. That's funny.
Fair enough. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we see an Ninjago set in an upcoming episode of Invincible. it'll be kind of cool to see if those worlds ever intertwine, since they're now Skybound Comics. But that's about the announcement. Let's talk about what it means now to have a canon comic book series that takes place in the actual Ninjago TV series timeline. Because it has both pros and cons.
It's
so
good.
Let's talk about the pros. Go ahead, Tyler.
I mean, that's really it. Like, it's just as reductive as it is. It's good because it makes me care. Ninjago has had no shortage of books. Ninjago has had no shortage of comics. It's got a lot of stuff over the years, mainly like Lego Club comics or whatever, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. It's got other material that isn't the TV show. None of it's ever been relevant, been canon, except for Dark Island. That was the only instance, and as a result of it, I've never read any of them or cared about any of them or desired to get any of them. We've made that point before. It holds very true. I don't know how many of you have read The Phantom Ninja or any of Greg's like books.
Well, because definitely read Greg.
I read most of the old Ninjago comics, like the Greg ones, because back in the day there wasn't like a canon, so no one knew if these are canon or not.
That makes sense.
So I didn't like at that point. I just assumed
it was just Ninjago material.
Yeah, exactly. But nowadays, like most of the comics are like in the magazines, and those are very much like non-canon.
Yeah.
So
and don't get me wrong, I don't want to like be too diminishing of people's work. Like, people are hired to do a job. People are hired to write a story. They do it. It might be good. It might be well written. It might be entertaining. It might have good characters. That's whatever. The decision ultimately as to whether it is to be recognized as canon or not isn't up to those people. Trust me, I'm the number one champion of Marvel TV, and there's constantly debate over whether or not that is canon or not.
Not so much.
Ultimately, not so much anymore. Yeah. Ultimately, the decision to make those shows canon is not up to the writers, and it's not up to the authors of the books either. It's up to the higher ups, the people in charge of the story. They look at all the material and they're like, well, do we want to fit that into the bigger picture? In Ninjago's case, I don't know who exactly, maybe it was Tommy Andres and maybe not, but they were like, no, none of these stories fit into our bigger picture. So for me, looking to get the full picture of Ninjago, that's why I've never cared to read them. Having stories that actually are, well, suddenly I'm interested in reading them because it helps me complete the full picture. I love that there's a Garmadon story. I'm really hyped about this. I think it's really cool because I like Garmadon, and I've been wondering what's up with him ever since March of the Oni, and now we're going to learn.
Yeah.
So it's a net positive to me.
Absolutely.
Someone that's relatively recently caught up with Ninjago. Like, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was we got through Seabound, but yeah, I can say that before I never really had much interest in extraneous reading material, especially if it doesn't have any kind of impact on the story. But given that Garmadon is such a significant character and one of the most interesting characters at that, as well as this story.
Nope.
Did Zach die?
Okay.
I don't know.
I was scared it was me.
I was scared it was me too.
I was scared it was me.
Yeah. No, I changed my mind. I was scared it was you, mess up. No,
He was about to compliment, and then the Lego, like detectives, the Lego gods killed him.
Tommy was like,
"Agony, I'm back. I'm back."
How was that?
I was just saying that given Garmadon is story relevant and also a really cool character, I will be excited to check this out. But previously, I haven't been much interested in extraneous reading material that doesn't have any kind of effect on the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Sakota?
Yeah, I feel like the story they're going for with like what Garmadon did after March of the Oni is perfect to do in like some kind of comic or book or something, some outside media, because like when he ever comes back would we get like a flashback to what he did? Probably not, or maybe a short one. But people want to know what he's up to because he's such an important character and such an interesting character. So I think that's the perfect opportunity for something like this.
I agree. I think it's a perfect little like moment in time to capture because of how much we love the character, like y'all mentioned, and because of how vital of a moment this is for him. This is a very interesting time in this version of Garmadon's quote unquote life. I guess he's alive, where he did something good after being resurrected to only be evil. So he's going off kind of like, so what am I, you know? And this is hopefully going to be the story of, you know, if we ever see Garmadon again, this will be kind of like connecting the pieces until we see him again. Are we going to see main cast characters in this? Probably not. If we do, they'll probably be in flashbacks, I would hazard to guess, stuff that's like, you know, concrete in the story. And not, you know, because we're playing around with stuff that's actually happening in Ninjago real time with Garmadon doing stuff. So like this comic is going to cross paths with Asphira, even though we're not going to actually see Asphira. Like timeline wise, we're going to cross with Asphira. We're going to cross with Prime Empire, Master of the Mountain, maybe even all the way to Wojira.
Do we know that? Because like there is a couple of months gap between March of the Oni and like
we don't
True.
know that.
It could be all in that time span.
It depends on how long it goes.
Yeah,
we have the plot synopsis, or at least the premise, in the official press release.
Go for it.
Far away from Ninjago City, a village is terrorized by a mysterious new threat when they're saved by a stranger with incredible powers known as Garmadon, Lord of Destruction. Has Garmadon turned over a new leaf since his disappearance? Or is this just the first step in his master plan of finally defeating Master Wu and the ninja forever? So we're going to be playing with the is he good, is he not angle. There's no clue about, you know, timeline, only that it's not anywhere close to Ninjago.
It's not close to Ninjago City, which is fair because most of the stuff that happens, you know, except for Master of the Mountain and that one beginning moment in season 11 takes place near Ninjago City.
Yeah.
So it we'll definitely never cross paths with the ninja, but we'll get to see what he's been up to. I actually have no clue what to expect. Like I honestly, like, I don't even know where they're going to take his character from here.
I feel like that the cover image kind of like implies those like lone wanderer, old samurai movie vibes, and I'm down for that.
I can totally see a story where like you know, maybe Garmadon he saves people maybe incidentally, and then they become indebted to him, and so he hangs around because he's like treated super well. And then maybe he starts to care for like the people of the village or whatever, or forms like a relationship with a few side characters. And then maybe he has to like step up and be a genuine protector at some point, and then he leaves for some angsty reason, like not wanting to get close to people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of potential they could do.
Oh yeah. It's I'm also curious to see like what personality Garmadon's gonna have. Because the personality we saw in March of the Oni was
hilarious,
really
funny.
Enjoyable. Yeah. It was really fun to watch to see what he was doing. I mean, we never forget the moment where he tried to smile with Lloyd. Never forget the scene with Vinny from NGTV.
Yes.
NGTV. March of the Oni Garmadon was so good. So
he was the best part of that
special. I really hope they keep it consistent here.
Oh yeah. I hope so too.
So what I'm curious about, and I mean it's a comic, so I hope so. I hope there is internal monologue, at least in some capacity, because Garmadon is the one character I would love to get inside his head. So
you know there's gonna be like it's totally gonna be inner monologue Garmadon, like him trying to figure out who he is.
Unless they go the third person route where it's the story of someone watching this guy act and it's a different perspective every time.
I don't think they do that in a comic literally called Garmadon.
And here you can see Garmadon trying to scratch his head, but his arms are too short.
It's like a wildlife documentary.
But yeah, it's quite interesting, and I it being a comic, especially by like a major like Streamline Comics company, it's a pretty big deal. This people who have never heard of Ninjago or heard Ninjago a little bit are going to see this for the first time in this way, and I think Garmadon is an excellent character to be enough of an enticing nugget to be like, wait, this Ninjago show has a character like this.
Yeah,
it'll hopefully put some more eyes on Ninjago than before. Probably not that much, but just a few. A few more people will be able to see Ninjago.
True. So universally, pretty much among us at least, we're like, this is a cool thing.
It is a very
all
cool
like
thing.
this.
Mm-hmm.
LJ, you like this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is a great idea. Because I'm a proponent for more canon material, with obvious caveats that I'm sure we're about to get into.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a net positive for our school of thought. There's very little way this could be framed as a bad thing to me.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I mean, getting more Ninjago canon story is always a good thing, because it's we already don't get.
Story is good, yeah.
Yeah, the story is good, yeah.
Getting more content is always a good thing. Looks at Golden Hour, cries.
Looks at the island. But we all love Canon Ronin now. But
okay, shut your mouth.
But
he was at Neo's funeral. He's redeemed.
Oh my goodness. Fair enough.
Who cares?
I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids.
Yeah, I know she's gone, so I can get away with it.
But anyway, let's get into the it's not like, I would say, like, I'll stick with the word cons, because it's nothing super negative. It's just issues that could pop up because of how it's being handled currently. And I think the first thing to get us into it is, ever since this announcement, which was on October 29th from Skybound, we had so many people talk about it, from the Ninja Whips to the Tommy Andresens to Skybound Comics themselves have talked about it. But we haven't had an official announcement from the Lego group about this connection. And I think that is where we enter discussion about, we get this new piece of canon Ninjago story, but with no marketing from Lego side.
It's disappointing. And it's also, it's unsurprising, because I've remarked on this before a lot in terms of Bionicle, but it's very true with Ninjago too. Lego has never, to my knowledge, publicized, advertised, or commented on books for their original story-driven IPs.
Mm-hmm.
The Bionicle chapter books, to my knowledge, the only recognition they ever got was there was a Lego lifestyle page on their website where like a tiny image of like one of the covers of, I think, the G2 chapter books were posted in, and technically, indirectly, the instruction manuals of some of the Bionicle G1 sets would show like the website. And then if you go to the website, I mean, at one point you could read Journey's End on the website. So that counts, right?
They sometimes have like little advertisements for books in the little catalogs you get at like stores that sell Lego sets.
Yeah, that's about the farthest I've seen it go. Press releases don't mention them. The website doesn't even actively mention them for the respective themes. Lego social media definitely doesn't mention them. And I think it's always been weird, to the point where maybe there's a contractual reason why they don't mention them.
I think,
or maybe they really just don't care.
It might be that it's like not a Lego product because they don't like make it. It's
published by like Amit.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever the reason, it's always been a weird, glaring omission. to the point where a lot of people feel like the books are kind of indirectly sabotaged from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, yes, but also this is the most pop I've seen an announcement get. Having a live stream at some like event.
Yeah.
They talk about it, coupled with official press releases. This is more than the Bionicle books ever got.
Yeah.
So,
like, it's big, but there's going to be a lot of Ninjago fans who are going to miss out on this probably because they haven't heard of it. Like, you can probably only buy this at comic shops, or you get it online at Skybound.com. Like, if you go to Barnes and Noble to, like, you know, say look at the book section, you know, the Ninjago encyclopedias and whatnot, you're not going to see this cross those shelves. And this is a canon story that, much like the Dark Island, will probably hit shelves and then vanish, and then good luck finding a copy for like $100. And it's a canon story too, so it's like one of those, like,
that's about the price the Dark Island's.
Yeah. So
I wonder if it will take to PDF form and be available online after a time.
No, it will take to PDF form and be available the day it launches, because they launch it on major online platforms on the same day.
Oh,
yeah, this is
well, that's good.
So it'll spread a little easier, and hopefully the Ninjago community will, like, you know, it'll get on Discord, it'll get on, you know, Twitter, it'll get on Instagram, it'll get on Tumblr, and it will spread around so that this canon story can be seen by all. And I think that is honestly my biggest fear with this story. You know, we don't want the Dark Island all over again, where people are like, "What is that?" You know.
Yeah, this discussion, because mostly the negative sentiment has been to a minimum. Most people seem to generally be happy about this announcement. This was my exploration of the negative sides of things were sourced from a tweet thread that I saw on Twitter. I am not going to call the person out, you know, maliciously, but just to give them credit for their opinions. It was a PinKit11 on Twitter. They were expressing concerns about, you know, the negative side to this announcement. And I find it interesting to explore that, since none of us really share those opinions and think about it. The points that he raises that could be construed as this being a bad thing are about fourfold. The first is what you just mentioned. You know, Lego's not promoting this. They're, quote unquote, sending it out to die. It will fade into obscurity or irrelevancy, like most of their other written endeavors. The second opinion, and I want to talk about all these because they're interesting, is a canon story should be told in the show. The opinion that if you're going to tell a relevant canon story that will become, you know, quote, required reading or mandatory viewing to get the full experience, then it deserves a spot in the mainline show, or if not, in an equivalent visual media, so shorts or a spin-off. The third opinion is basically that Lego shouldn't really be doing books at all, because their visual media is more, it can spread easier, it can get more publicity, it can get more notoriety, more people can see it, it'll be archived at some point via a DVD release or put up on their YouTube channel or whatever, and people can actually see it. And then fourth, which is kind of following up on that, if you do books and if you do comics and you make it canon stories, then you're repeating the, quote, Bionicle mistake, where Bionicle lore and Bionicle story was tied to chapter books that became harder and harder to find and are now incredibly hard to come by when you get new people into the theme. And it's one of the reasons it died in the first place. So I want to go through these because I think it's interesting to explore.
This is the multimedia effect that has now crept into Ninjago. Started with the Dark Island, went into Spinjitzu Brothers, which is to be hopefully announced to be canon, and finally into the first officially canon.
But LJ,
the first officially canon. And the book, well, the books have been Spinjitzu, I would imagine, you know, the Garmadon book with Harumi, stuff like that, that is canon. And then the first official canon comic book series, the Garmadon series. So we're entering this multimedia phase that Bionicle immediately started with.
That's true.
So we're going to talk in a bit about that. So I'll hand this over to the Bionicle Bros.
Thank you.
To discuss why this could have negative effects on Ninjago, but it most certainly will have. It'll help out.
So, I don't think it's gonna have negative effects at all.
I agree. Mesa, do you want to go first? Or...
You can go first.
Okay. So I just want to address this one point here from Penn. It should, quote, "It should be said, I do appreciate getting more of the world we love, but there are better ways to do so than books of any kind. As much as we need to encourage younger generations to read, they aren't going to know these exist by majority, and therefore won't encourage that," end quote. So, I heavily disagree. Bionicle books are how I got into reading. Period. I knew how to read beforehand, but there was nothing that ever gripped me. Bionicle novels are the reason why I got interested in reading books of any kind.
That's awesome.
The argument that they won't be advertised enough and hence will not encourage that, we don't know yet. It's too recent. We aren't sure.
I do think it's reasonable to assume based on precedent. It is fair to assume,
but this is a huge comic company. Like they publish Invincible, which just got a TV show on Amazon, which was huge, and The Walking Dead, which obviously was made into a TV show, which was also huge. So, like, this is a good place for Ninjago Comics to be because it's a large publisher. And obviously they're working with Amit, who's been working with Lego for over a decade, longer than I suspect.
That's correct.
Even if Lego themselves isn't doing it, I can assure you, people will inevitably find out about it. The multimedia argument with Bionicle is that there were so many different forms of media, it was hard to know where to enter. And that's only partially true. Bionicle and its media consumption during release wasn't that hard to follow. It was only difficult when we got into 2007 with all of the online serials, which were not as heavily integrated into the books and the comics, but you still had to bounce between serial chapters and wait for their releases and know which one to flip between in order to keep current and keep understanding with things.
When the material was ongoing, it was pretty straightforward. It was the movies, the comics, which were mailed to you for free if you had a Lego Club membership.
Yep.
And then the books. And sometimes the comic and the book stories overlapped. So you could read one fully and get the gist of it.
Most of the time.
And then if you wanted more, you would read the books for an expanded version. But the comics tell the main beats.
With a few exceptions, there are no stories that the comics told that the books did not. Other way around. There are no stories that the books told that the comics didn't. Again, with a few exceptions. So, and that point about the comics being mailed in is especially important to note because there was a point in 2003 where Bionicle comics were in more circulation than Batman and Superman.
Yep.
That's massive. Yeah. That is massive. That is a large amount of people. Yep. So accessibility was never really an issue. The books are published by Scholastic, and Scholastic book fairs were obviously huge. Like, people know about these things. They find out about these things. That's why these companies will advertise them, and people will know. It's not necessarily dependent on Lego to do so. Further, if you're interested enough, you're gonna be looking into it. Like, you're gonna be investigating and finding out. There are different levels of fan. There are different levels of engagement with these properties and these mediums. With everything. With Bionicle, you can be a fan of just the movies. You can be a fan of just the toys. You can be a fan of just the books. And then not interact with any other aspect of the theme. Same thing with Ninjago. There are people in the community that are fans of just the toys. There are people that are fans of just the story. there are people that are fans of, okay, probably not anyone that are fans of just the movie, but you get my point. Like,
just the movie.
so
Also,
I think.
like,
go ahead.
Like, people will always find ways to engage with it, and if they're determined enough, they will investigate and determine whether or not it's a canon story and whether it matters.
I think I personally could see an argument up to a certain age threshold, because this is a conversation for a completely other time, but I do think that we are and have been coming into a generation where the youngest of us are incredibly media inclined and not so much.
Yeah, to play devil's advocate, what young people read books these days?
A lot of them.
I think yes, especially when you get to like grade school years, there's required reading. Of course, libraries are still very big in those schools, but in the I guess preschool and a little like a couple years out of that kind of age range, I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of children in my area that I have dealt with and seen personally that are very very much of the I'm going to watch TV and play on a tablet, and what is a book? Never heard of it.
That's my point.
I mean, you can read a comic on a tablet.
Yeah. Like I said though, I could see the argument for up to that certain point, but for those that are interested, once they reach that like awareness of, oh, there are books, and if they like books, then they will go look for those books. If they like comics, they will go look for those comics. If they're interested in something and are interested enough to see what other forms of media it has. Like me personally, I didn't know that the Bionicle books were a thing until I went to a library and thought, these toys that I have had a movie. I wonder if they have books too. And I went and figured that out. I was like,
Scholastic Book Fair for me.
Until you went to a library is more my key point here. And I feel like I don't like the argument that kids aren't reading very much nowadays. They're on their tablets or their smart devices or what have you. Okay, I made this point very recently to a fellow adult. I feel like a lot of us forget we are adults. By the way, we are.
I forget that.
I was having a conversation about a month or two ago with someone, and she was making the argument that, the tablets, they're just the root of evil. They're, if kids aren't reading anymore, they should pick up a book. And I made the point to her, I was like, listen, you can read a book on a tablet. Is a book read on a Kindle invalid in comparison to a paper book? If you read a newspaper online, do you lose anything? Like, it's still reading. It's still an actual... Sorry, what?
As a curiosity question, are the Spinjitzu brothers on Kindles and on like online books?
I don't know.
Or are they just paperback? I think they are.
I checked, they aren't in Germany, but I don't know if they are.
The answer is yes. They are on digital.
So my point is, I feel like it's a little disingenuous to discount how many people read books, because it perpetuates this idea that people aren't interested in reading books, which isn't true. Like, books are huge. Libraries are massive. And they're popular. Libraries are super popular because people do like to read. They like to use their imagination. And I don't want to push this narrative that people aren't getting interested in reading, or they can't be, or they're just going to choose their games and tablets. Like, let's get people interested in reading. Let's push reading.
I agree.
I would say
the
experience that Zach relates is very anecdotally true. We've all heard of that as an experience in a subset. We can't necessarily make sweeping claims about the nation or the world without looking at specifics. But I'm sure there are people who have that view, and I'm sure they're not a microscopic amount of them.
Yeah.
By flip side, I would present a lot of the biggest movies are movies based off of young adult books for kids. And
I
those have
can-
not gone
comic
anywhere.
books,
There
too.
is
The
a source
comic
for all of
books.
that.
The thing I was going to
Um,
follow up by saying was I could see the argument for younger and unaware audiences, but for audiences that are old enough to be cognizant of a franchise having multiple forms of media and cognizant enough to want to go search out that media, I do not see it being a problem.
And this is
More or
where
less.
I will step in and say the audience that they want reading these books, and I'm not sure about the comic. I don't know how, like, what age they're going with the comics, but I'm guessing, I mean, especially with the books that just came out, I don't know if they're aware enough to go after those. Because it's a young literature, like it's a young reader's book for sure. And these kids these days that, they aren't really the type to go searching for stuff. They like stuff immediately. They like, they hop on to play a game on their laptop or their tablet or whatnot. Like if they want more Ninjago content, they go on Netflix or they go on fill in the blank and they just watch an episode.
If they
They
still
have
have
to
book
really
clubs
go
in
searching.
school, they'll be fine.
Yeah,
If
well,
Scholastic
I
Book
agree.
Club still happens, I wasn't the type of kid. I loved reading, and I wasn't the type of kid to go searching for stuff.
Yeah,
It was presented to me
it's a
at
very,
school.
very different world.
That's how
for
I
these
got-
kids.
That's
Because
how
I was a reader. I read like the entire Warriors like series over and over again in school because I had the library like right there. These days, like when I go over to my cousin's house, I never see a book in their hands. In fact, I gave my cousin the first book for Percy Jackson and said, "There's a new series coming out. You're old enough. He's like 12. Like you should read this. It's a fantastic book series. You should do it." I did that about a year ago, and he hasn't finished it. I don't even think he started it. It's a very, very new time for these kids where they have these screens, they have these games, and reading words is not as appealing as watching stuff, as looking at pictures. It's very, very different. And it trust me, it hurts my heart because I love books. I find myself going back into all these different series from time to time, but these kids are just not getting this stuff. And to see like important Ninjago stuff coming out in these type of formats where the target audience is not really in that vibe, because like when you guys were kids, like it was Bionicle. Like Bionicle was in books and comics, and this is what we did. Like we would read, we would do comics. Like this was
I had video games when I was younger too, Haley.
Yeah, but like, did you have?
I loved Metroid and Mario and Cartoon Network and Disney Channel and Nicktoons.
Yeah, but did you have Roblox where there's
I didn't seek out books. I wasn't a 5-year-old who went library crawling.
Did you have?
I was enrolled in public school, and they made me go to a book fair. And they said, get a book or two. And I was like, well, what's a book for a thing I like? And I was like, Harry Potter's cool. And, Bionicle books. Those are cool. And that's how I found out that Bionicle books
But Tyler,
existed.
this is a different world than your childhood.
I think no. The reality of...
Haley, just because it's a different world, book fairs haven't gone away. Those aren't voluntary things.
I know. It's not voluntary, but is it as appealing as it was?
It doesn't matter.
Wait, no. What would have changed to make it not appealing anymore?
Going home to having your own iPad, having your own phone.
Like when I went home to my...
Like
when I went home to my own Game Boy or my own desktop computer with the Matsunui online game.
100%. These kids will rather have a iPad or Roblox over reading a new book.
So why didn't we?
Yeah, I think this argument is branching into a totally different direction.
It is really
the two extremes that you guys are talking about are mostly under the dictation of how parents interact with their children, how much screen time they're allowed, and how much they encourage reading. That is also a completely different conversation for another time. I have seen the extremes of both of... I've seen the extremes of both of these. I've seen families that their kids have never touched a book from the moment they were born to like being 5 years old. And I have seen families where the kid is 4 years old and is already reading books like Percy Jackson to try to catch up with the series. There is, I think, a middle ground that is what we are going to be seeing a majority of in, I guess, what we consider modern parenting and modern childhoods. But I do not think it's going to sway so heavily one way or the other that, oh, kids aren't going to find out about these books strictly because they're going to be keeping their noses in their iPads or whatever. Nor do I think that everyone is going to hear about them, because I do think that we are coming into an age and have been in an age of instant gratification for a while where, yeah, children are more distracted by media and are probably going to want to watch what is readily available on their TV, just as has been for, the last 50 years. It's just more accessible now than it was before. So I don't think it's going to heavily sway or impact one way or the other. I still think that this comic and books that come out are going to get into the hands of youngsters that are interested.
I feel like you're... Go ahead, Scott.
I think there's also a specific thing about this being a comic. Because when I was like 12, 13, I had like an iPod Touch and I could have played all the games I want on there. But instead, I downloaded the Marvel and DC Comics app and read digital comics on my iPod.
Yeah.
And went to the comic book store. And these comics will be in the comic book stores. And comic book stores advertise upcoming comics. And this is a major publisher. And I think they'll definitely get the audience that is both a Ninjago and a comic fan that way. But I agree. Don't want to make like assumptions on how many people that is nowadays.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that there is going to be a bit of both in case, in the case of who's going to get wrapped up in this or not. But those that are interested and cognizantly aware of their beloved franchise having multiple forms of media will seek this out. They will be aware of it. I'm not concerned about it flopping or failing or just plain out being inaccessible. I'm not concerned about that.
Yeah. Okay. See, I feel like that this is an important and related conversation because there's a claim being made that isn't lining up well. I don't think
we shouldn't try to sweep the conversation under the rug. Let's let it play out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I fear that the target audience that these books and comics are aimed for are to an audience that does not appreciate or look for it at the same extent as people like us do and like we did back in the day.
Okay.
That's my biggest fear. I know that everyone
to counter the thing about the book fair though. Just because I liked reading, I was not a stereotypical book lover who would crawl through libraries. I was enrolled in public school by my mother. I went to public school for 8 years and then was homeschooled during high school. And during those years, reading was a mandatory part of my education. And so when I had, except for books that were mandated by teachers, I, of course, being a kid who had to read, I sought books about things I enjoyed.
Yes.
And during that, I helped broaden my love for it.
But to be fair, that's not going to be this comic, right?
I don't.
This is a separate thing. This is about Spinjitzu Brothers, more so than the comic. The concern about just because kids have iPads today, they're not going to read at all. No, they're still going to have to read. They're still going to choose hobbies that they enjoy. They're still going to choose books based on things they enjoy. And so long as Ninjago is popular, there's a high odds that those books will be Spinjitzu Brothers. That's my point. Because scholastic book fairs are still ongoing. Kids still have to read. Good parenting probably encourages reading. And honestly, this is purely hypothetical, but if Lego's market research was that books do not sell, they probably wouldn't be making them. I'm pretty sure they're going to sell well enough. I'm pretty sure their sales reports are probably good enough considering they've already greenlit like 4 Spinjitzu Brothers books. As someone who actively works retail, we have about 4 times as much shelf space allotted for books as we do movies and games, and about half that is kids' books for under 10 years old, and they fly off the shelves pretty well because I'm constantly having to restock them, which I know is purely anecdotal, but like I'm pretty sure reading isn't dead. Is it on the decline? I would say probably yeah, but again, I don't know that. It's anecdotally.
And at the same time, it's like the arguments being made here really only they're arguments in service of discouraging novels or books or reading material. Like they don't encourage it at all, and that's why they only at this rate exist and are being used and can be utilized to make sure we don't get anything else like this again. We don't get any novels. We don't get any other multimedia outside of the television show, which is fine, but it's also a little bit of a double standard when we sit here and complain that the television show and its distribution is being so heavily mismanaged that accessibility to it has been basically nil. And then when we have a multimedia where we know the multimedia, we know the release schedule for it, we know where it's going, we know when it's happening, we know how accessible it's going to be, and we decry it, it's like, well, we're trying to have a cake to eat, and then we're throwing it further away from us.
More or less.
I guess I can relate that to books too, because Ninjago, up until it has the Netflix releases now, but it's not like its primary release. They still want Ninjago's primary release to be aired live on TV, which is outdated. It's very outdated.
Yeah.
Which I could compare to, I guess, books. Because having like books released, in libraries and Barnes and Noble and whatnot is on the verge of being outdated. It's not officially outdated.
You can just order it on Amazon, right?
You can order it on Amazon and you can have it shipped to your thing. But it's one of those like comics are fine because it's digital. Like now, if you go to a comic store, that's getting a little outdated too because you've got digital releases and whatnot. But Lego hasn't really...
I'll disagree with that.
Right. Yeah. Right there, though. Right there. Finish your point, please, but I want to key in on something. What
okay.
I would like to say something as well.
Fair enough. It's... Kids these days, I would imagine, and I've seen this because I have, kids in the family, they... Stuff that is hard copy are not really needed anymore. They're not really wanted. They don't say, hey, I want X and X and X and X for Christmas or for my birthday. I want a new book for my birthday. That doesn't happen anymore. It's all like, updated technology because you can get these things on technology or whatnot. And what Lego, I believe, should do is say there's a new book release or there's a new release for, comics or whatnot, be able to say this is where you can go for more Ninjago content instead of it just being you can purchase the Spinjitzu Brothers on Amazon.com for Kindle or all the way over on Skybound Comics on their website. They have that, but it's all scattered. That there's no if kids want to find more Ninjago content online, it's a little bit more hard to come by, and it's on places that kids probably shouldn't be going to, or at least that target audience should be going to.
Okay, so I want to key in on something, and you're making my points. You said that comic releases are becoming a little more outdated because of digital release
for kids.
What do you think books are doing? The exact same thing. Books released digitally all the time. They have been for years. They are doing the exact same thing. I'm not talking adult novels. I'm talking young reader novels. I'm talking kids' books, which we've obviously seen. Any longtime listeners of the TTV channel might recall a little series called BioTalk Book Club. And some listeners of the TTV channel, the TTV podcast rather, might recall a discussion that we had pertaining to my desire for a physical copy of one of the new G2 books that I got in the box. Anyway,
box of useless junk.
So
I remember this.
The thing here is, like, we're not making the argument for strictly physical copies.
Yeah.
We're talking about written, readable material and media. Generally.
Would it be nice if everything was available for free on Ninja? If a kid just typed Ninjago.com, and on Ninjago.com they could watch every episode of the show and the movie and play every game and do the comics
going online
and read the comics there for free and the books for free. Yeah, that would be nice. That would sure help with accessibility. But that's not the reality we live in. For products that are made that have a cost to them, like games, like books, like comics, and yes, even occasionally like the show and the movie, with Netflix or DVDs or whatnot, the most you can do, you're not going to be able to consolidate it all in one place. The most you can do is make it, available digitally on the internet for people to access at the click of a button. If you want to watch the show, pay a monthly fee, ask your parents, Netflix, make a Netflix account, watch Ninjago. If you want to buy the books, if you want to buy the comics, you just go to Amazon, you type Ninjago, it's all there. The comic, I'm pretty sure, is going to be on Amazon. The books are all on Amazon. Games, buy them on Amazon. That's the most you can do. It works for every other kids franchise, that has a multimedia approach. The amount of Peppa Pig books I've had to stock, it's like, right, I can only assume it works out for them. Like, I don't see why Ninjago has to be the, only TV show allowed.
And there are two things that I wanted to add to that too. For the argument of books, I would like to say that audiobooks in particular are continuously increasing in popularity, especially nowadays. I think every book that I have been interested in the last 10 years has had an audiobook release within a week, if not same day release as the book itself. And that's because people are growing more and more interested in audiobooks as a medium. In terms of comics, the current adult generation is Gen Z and millennials, as well as, I guess, the generation above that. We're all fans of comics. We have grown up, especially with, think of how huge the MCU is right now. And has been for a while. Marvel has its roots in comics, and fans of that series, I wouldn't say I'm a comic collector, but if I see a cool I own more than just a few comics for franchises I like. I have a handful of Bionicle comics, I have a handful of Marvel comics. My dad was a collector, and I have extended family that are relatively my age, a little older, but they're having kids, and I know for a fact that their kids are also going to be interested in comics because of their parents. So especially with how big superheroes are in this day and age, and the fact that those superheroes have had their roots in comics, I don't see comics being outdated anytime soon in terms of going out and acquiring them. Maybe physical copies, yeah, I could see an argument for that, but again, digital age, everything is getting a digital release either same day or within a relative same time frame as the physical release. So that's all I wanted to say.
I want to add something to what Meso said earlier about the whole, I wish we had a Ninjago website where we could just get everything. And that would be awesome, but honestly, I'm feel a bit safer sometimes with the stuff being on things like Amazon or Netflix or Google, because we had something like that for BionicleStory.com, and when they canceled the theme, that website was just gone and it wasn't accessible anymore. But you can still get Nexo Knight's book on the Kindle eShop if you want them. So in that way, being on Amazon, it's longer available for fans. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why they're straying away from having it all in one consolidated, operated website, is strictly because if and when Ninjago kicks the can, all of that media is going to vanish. And unless someone is actively archiving that and is able to preserve all of that in some third-party method,
I mean,
we're going to end up...
but...
Yeah, I'm sure that there is people out there, but then you have to trust a third-party service to be doing that instead of getting the source material from trusted sources.
Well, my point was more of not have it physically on the website. It was more of on the website, you can see where you can go to get more.
I wish they would do that. That's what I've been wanting them to do for 2 decades.
That is what I would, you want to watch the Ninjago series? You can watch it on Netflix. You want to read these canon stories? Here are links to where you can either purchase them or find them online.
I wish so desperately they would do it, but for some reason they're reluctant against it. They've never done it for Bionicle. They've never done it for Hero.
If they had something like that, that is a digital place where kids who want to know more about Ninjago can go to find out about canon stories such as the Garmadon comics, the Spinjitzu brothers, instead of it being scattered in the internet.
Don't get me wrong. I agree, and I think we should campaign for Lego to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, they won't, because people have been campaigning for them to do that for about 15 years. So
yeah,
if we accept that Lego won't, to me, the solution isn't don't make books.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
And we say absolutely not. Unfortunately, not everybody agrees. Some people like Penkid feel like it's just wasted effort. And I kind of sympathize, because they're like, he's even said, I like stories in this universe. I like stories with these characters. I'd rather they be in material that's actually going to get notoriety and get advertising. I sympathize with that. I do.
The fault is once again in Lego's hands.
I think that you guys are welcome to counter or interject on this. I'm wondering if the reason why they're not creating their own source for media or whatever is because their concern is strictly the physical product of sets. They're not a media company, they're a toy company.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. That is the reason.
That's the issue. That they don't realize that even though they're a toy company, they're creating a lot more than just toys. Well, even though that's what they're. They
absolutely are. But then you
have a
company that knows. You have a company that knows toys, and so that's what they stick with, and that's what they're good at. And they outsource their media projects to other media companies because those companies, that's what they know and that's what they do and that's what they're good at.
It's funny, I actually never asked this question regarding to Bionicle. When they canceled Bionicle, were they looking at just toys? For sales?
Well, yeah, of course.
So they weren't looking at sales of books or everything else. It was just toys, or was it all of it?
Because I feel like there's a little bit of a misunderstanding here about how all this multimedia stuff works. Lego doesn't go to other companies because of their expertise. They go to other companies because they straight up don't make other things. Lego makes toys.
They're a toy manufacturer.
They are a toy manufacturer. And when they go to the book companies. Like Scholastic publishes these novels.
Amit is one of them.
Other companies get contracted to write these stories.
And again, this is kind of how well this works. Books, TV shows, movies, all of that, I must stress, are advertisements. They are all advertisements. Make no mistake, they are high-quality advertisements because they are engaging stories. And while it is certainly true that Lego does like to cultivate, story and imagination and cultivate that, that spark, that creativity, while that is true, Lego at its core is a toy company. They are selling toys. And any story material is advertisement for those products. It doesn't always end up translating one-to-one. Spinjitzu Brothers is a good example. The Upley minifigures that don't exist are a good example. But That is at the
Shame.
end of the day what Lego
Yeah.
is about. So when you say like Lego, they weren't looking at book sales or comics, of course not, because
It was just
the profit, the big profit for book sales, go to the publishers. Lego gets a kickback because people buy the books and they're like, oh snap, Tahu just did that awesome thing in that book. I'm going to go get Tahu so I can recreate the thing he did in the book and make my own stories at home. That's how Lego benefits from a book sale. But when they look to cancel a theme, they don't look at anything but their profits.
Can confirm I lost all of my Bionicle sets in a hurricane, but when I read the Island of Doom book and read the part where Tahu was fighting Zaktan on like the rainy cliff, I was like, I kind of want to get Tahu again.
Yeah,
So I went and got Tahu Numa.
That's how it's worked. That is 100% how it is. So
that leads to the point of Lego not caring about story material. They looked at numbers for Bionicle toy sales, and without even any regard to where the story was in for Bionicle, they just cut it.
Ish. I want to stress ish.
Well, they said that they gave one. Well, I mean, they cut it, and then of course they said we'll give you one way for the finish, but without
They let Greg continue.
They again, there's so many. There's like asterisks.
Yeah.
Kind of, because Lego was going to kill Bionicle without a conclusion. The story team.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the story team had to fight for it. So
yeah, they're like literally like without even regard to the story.
Yes,
they cut it, and then they had to fight for it.
Correct.
Back.
So
that, unfortunately, is the same state with Ninjago, that they don't have any regard for Ninjago's story.
Correct.
It's all about the sets, and even though like they don't realize that they have so much interlooping in Ninjago's story is so huge that it's actually important.
I think there's a difference between they don't realize and they have the priority of we sell the toys, not the books. The other company sells the books, and that gets us more toy sales.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I'm sure that they're sympathetic towards the fans of their series and there's like the stories that they're making through their toys, but it's not their priority. Their priority is to sell the sets, and if the sets aren't selling, then they don't continue it. If they think that they should move on to other prospects or they just don't want to focus on it anymore, then they won't.
I don't want to frame it or have it framed to our audience that Lego is an evil megalomaniac.
No, absolutely not.
They are not. What they are, however, is a company. Like we interact with the writers and the story heads and the voice actors on Twitter and all these passionate people. They're not the people who are making the decisions. They're not the people who decide, hey, we're not going to have easily available links on the website for how to find things. Like
Ninjago story,
actual Lego does not care, which is why I've always said they tripped backwards into success with Bionicle, and I think they're tripping backwards into success with Ninjago. And it was all accidental.
We know this to be like factually true. I mean, accidental in the sense that there's a great novel. It's a book that I always recommend people get. It's called Brick by Brick: How Lego Rewrote the Rules of Innovation and Conquered the Global Toy Industry. Phenomenal book. It goes into its history. They have an entire chapter on both Bionicle and Ninjago. Highly encourage checking that out because it goes into how Bionicle was made. And like, I got to talk to the folks that created Bionicle, like the big 6 people attributed to its existence. And they've mostly corroborated that novel. It was completely lightning in a bottle, 100%, because they got all these different people. Like, very little of it was in-house. They outsourced a lot of creative minds for Bionicle to exist, and it shows. With Ninjago, it isn't quite that. It isn't quite to that degree. It is very in-house. Tommy Andreasen is, by and large, the mind.
How dare you say that? It very much was lightning in a bottle. Ninjago was only 44 minutes of content.
No. But you're sorry. You're misunderstanding me. Bionicle was lightning in a bottle. I said that Ninjago was not quite like the outsource that Ninjago was. Ninjago was in-house. because Tommy Andreasen works for Lego, and he had a large he played such a huge role in its design and direction. Not to say that other people didn't or there weren't other important people, but it's just to emphasize exactly how important Tommy Andreasen was in this. He was instrumental.
Well,
He was also
among the other heads of it. Yeah,
he
was one of a few. He's just stuck around since today.
Sure, yes, I know, true, but at the same time, also, like, I've seen the documentary. He's important. He was very instrumental in this entire thing, and he continues to be instrumental. So I definitely am of the opinion that Ninjago, it was crafted very purposefully, but it also had a lot of lucky streaks going for it. And Lego, corporate Lego, I want to clarify something. When we say Lego, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, the entire company, head to toe. But that's not the case. We are specifically referring, when we say Lego, to corporate Lego. We're not talking about
people who actually make the decisions.
Yes, we are not talking about story leads. We're not talking about set designers. We're not talking about creatives.
We're talking about the people that are paid to look at the numbers and go, this is what's working and this is what isn't.
Bingo.
Yeah.
So just a
that is their job.
there.
They're not out there to sabotage. They're not out there to make any specific decision with any agenda. It is strictly they are getting paid to make decisions that profit the company as a whole and allow it to succeed.
To sell more toys, basically.
To sell more toys, exactly.
To quote one of my favorite movies, it's not personal, it's just business.
Lord business.
That's the Lego grip right there. It's not personal, it's just business.
Yeah.
And so in their mind, if you sat them down in a room and you were like, what's wrong with your marketing efforts? I'm sure they'd be like, what do you mean? We have an interactive website. We have a cartoon show. We have books. We have comics. What's wrong? They don't care about this minutia of things. It's so disconnected. Like, they're going to look at the sales reports, which is kind of what I was getting at earlier. They're going to be like, well, do these products sell? If yes, we'll make more. If not, we won't. I'm guessing the reason they're making Garmadon and Spinjitzu Brothers, and they're revitalizing Ninjago's book efforts after a slight hiatus, is probably because Dark Island trilogy and the Paper Cuts novels and all this stuff, they probably sold pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they sold decently.
I honestly don't know the story with Dark Island because there's not a lot of copies, period.
From what I've heard here in Germany, the magazines have been selling really well.
That might be part of it.
Magazines have a lot of comics in them. And maybe they want to bank on that more. No.
Yeah. That might explain it actually internationally.
I mean,
I know the magazines are big over there.
I haven't seen any numbers or anything, but from what I've heard from anecdotal evidence, I'd say the magazines have been really popular here.
It is also the anniversary for Ninjago too. Not next year, but it might have been on the hype of Ninjago being 10 years. It's like, ooh, let's release more books. Ooh, let's do a comic
promotional.
A comic book series because Ninjago is
that is actually, thank you for mentioning that, because it reminds me, this is something we haven't discussed because we haven't been doing podcasts for a little bit. One of the things that was released were the first half sales figures for the Lego company in 2021.
Yeah.
They listed the top. So they listed the top 5 themes, but in the picture showing the top 6 themes, Ninjago was present.
Was one of them. Yeah.
So
while we're not the top 5, we're still in the top. We got beat out by
number 6.
We got beat out by Harry Potter because Harry Potter had a big year, and unfortunately, because Harry Potter had a big year, they're not going away anytime soon.
What?
Unfortunately, screw you.
Now,
what do you mean, unfortunately?
bringing that all the way around. What do you think gets more sales for Harry Potter?
People who've read the books.
Books.
Right?
The Harry Potter novels. And that
also remember that the Harry Potter sets, some of them are for kids. The bigger ones are for adults, and the adults are the one that are buying it. And the adults are the one who read the books when they were kids.
and then are probably encouraging their
And now
kids
encouraging
to
their kids
watch
to read
or
the books
read
or
them.
watch or
So-
read. So it makes them a fan too. But the reason why Harry Potter's doing so well is because our generation, which is now getting on money, and they're like, "Ooh, we're gonna give you guys, stuff, and not even toys. They're like, here are stuff you can like put in your room that's decorative, but has to do with Harry Potter." And we're
Okay,
like,
but-
yes,
But that interest has to
We
come
want
from
those.
somewhere.
and it comes from us who read books when we were
And,
kids.
and it comes from book consumption.
Yes, and again, my point is our childhood is very different than the childhood of those who are growing up right now.
Okay, but that's fine.
And that,
but
and that's
that-
unfortunately what we'll see how things are
I
in
don't-
about 10 to 20 years.
I don't necessarily agree that it's that different. I had a Game Boy. I had computer games that I played. I still read a lot of books.
The
I think
circumstances, I will admit mine is very anecdotal, but yeah, the circumstances that caused me to read would be applicable if I had a child right now in public school.
yeah.
But maybe my personal hobbies and my interests at home
Mhm.
would diverge, but also maybe not. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, Harry, that's an interesting example, is the Harry Potter conundrum.
Mhm. So we'll see what happens. Having all this stuff for Ninjago is good because it's more canon to the Ninjago world. It's going to be interesting to see what Garmadon is up to officially. But I again worry that. Well, again, I can't say anything because Lego corporate is not going to look at sales for this book. It's going to be Skybound who's going to like really look at it. But even if it comes out for free digitally, there's really not much. It's like one of those like there's not really much to look at here. It's just going to be a release story. I'm curious to see if the story is going to even. It's not going to be knotted in the show at all. I hope it lines up. Ooh.
Also, just to clarify what you said, I know you were just speaking as an example, but it's not coming out for free digitally, just so
It's
as
not?
to not mislead people. It's
No,
just a
not.
digital
Okay.
e-purchase.
Okay, digital purpose. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, fair enough.
How would you guys feel if they released this comic in the monthly issues of Lego magazine for whoever has the
Renewable
subscriptions,
Like they
That'd be
did.
cool.
like they did for Bionicle?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool, but it would depend on the structure of the comic, the length, the tone, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure. I would hope the tone wouldn't be that of how Lego Club Magazine comics are today. Or I guess Lego Life.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll have to see about that. But in principle, that would be good for getting it in the hands of kids. Yes.
Yeah. So
I would definitely advocate for that personally.
What I want to discuss is like we've discussed the corporate angle, we've discussed kids who may or may not read books or whatever. I want to discuss the other point that that Pinkid made, which is that canon stories should be represented in visual media, either in the show or in parody with the show, because in his eyes, I think. Let me get his exact quote. Says. Well, I can't find the exact quote he said. He was basically saying that it was a story people had wanted to see for years, basically, that now wasn't going to be in the hand or in the same format as other stories or treated in the same respect. And I would like to just kind of present a counter view, which obviously I think we all agree, different perspectives are good.
yeah.
I appreciate the Ninjago's approach. In comparison to Bionicle, I think it's a fresh way to approach it, having most of the story in a unified visual media. I think that's cool. I think it's a neat approach, and it definitely helps with accessibility. I won't deny it. I liked all of Bionicle's other media forms, but I will say, hey, you want to get into Ninjago? Well, let's boot up Netflix, and we'll spend a week or two just watching it. That definitely helps get people into it. It makes it easier.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, also can be a little fatiguing. Having everything be expressed in the same way, in the same format, Until recently, the same episode lengths, the same, structure, especially now with the 11-minute episodes where you got to have a fight in every episode. You got to have an action bit in every episode. You don't really get any downtime. You don't really get any time to explore characters. We just got to rush. And the things that we appreciate are often visuals, fight scenes, animation, action, rather than characterization, with the exception of a few things like Seabound. Having written material,
it's going to be good to have more stuff.
Yes, purely on the virtue of books, not necessarily whether kids read books. Books and comics present a way to take things a bit slower, to have a bit more introspection. Not a lot. I don't expect pages upon pages of soul-searching monologues, but having the internal monologue, having the ability to get inside characters' heads easier. It's cool. It can present the world in a different way. It can show you different sides of characters you wouldn't have otherwise gotten to see. Perfect example. Web of Shadows, third Bionicle movie. Often criticized because people don't like the fact that Vakama went evil. Doesn't make any sense. It was really poorly conveyed. Should have been Matau. Should have been somebody else that isn't Vakama, because why would Vakama turn evil? Greg even said he agreed. He was like, Vakama should have turned evil. I didn't want him to turn evil. It's just how it is. But he couldn't change it when he wrote the movie novelization. He had to write the plot that he didn't agree with. So he was like, well, how can I sell this? He was like, oh, I know how to sell this. Internal monologue. And he had scenes where Vakama would just reflect on his life and what he was doing and how he felt about everything and his insecurities and how he didn't feel like he was living up to being a leader and how he was failing Lekon and how he didn't want his friends to die and how they couldn't control their new forms, blah, blah, blah. Point is, he made it work in the book where it didn't work in the movie, and he did it by using the tools that you can only do in a book. Books are cool. Comics are cool. I like having them as other forms of media. That's it. Go on.
Yeah. I would like to also add, it is nice, like Mess was saying, to have alternative forms of media to something I wanted to bring up. Sometimes you have another story you want to tell and you just don't have room or time for it in the current story that is being told. And maybe you don't really have the budget to drop a mini series of animations. You don't have the budget to drop a mini series of animations of this side story that you really want to tell the people, and so you find another way to tell it. One of my examples I thought of was some of the books for Bionicle G2. I think of the extra story bits involving Kolta, or when the Protectors went and fought Lord of Skull Spiders after we thought that the big ugly one was dead. Stuff like that is really nice to have in an alternative form of media. One, so you don't get the exhaustion of, it's following the same formula as the TV show is, same flavor, different bread, I guess. You have it in a new form that is also easy to digest, depending on what your audience is. It's refreshing because it tells the story in a different way, and it also gives you the freedom to dive deeper into concepts and characters and this, that, or the other that can't be done with strictly one form of media or another.
Here, I just think as long as you're able to just watch the TV show and you get the plot of the TV show, and at no point you're like, I don't get anything, what's going on here, I missed something, it's fine. They can do side stuff as much as they want, as long as it doesn't hinder the main plot too much. And I mean, from what we had so far, the Dark Island basically is a season and there's a lot going on. But if you just watch the show, there's a mural you don't get and then they move on. Same with Shadow of Ronin, even though that's not even canon, but they kind of address it in the show a bit. So I think
I was sitting there Ronin? What? Who?
Yeah, I had to explain to Zach who Ronin was.
Okay. But I think this Garmadon thing is going to be completely fine. I think the main problem this approach causes is that the comic most likely will not have any huge impact on the world of Ninjago.
Yes.
And that's more of a hindrance of the comic than the TV show.
Yeah.
I would say it could certainly have an impact, but based on, history and how things are typically done, and not even just in Ninjago, but just in media in general, it probably won't. People tend
considering the fact that Tommy and Drayson knows nothing about this, I would say that has no impact on the show. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. He doesn't.
I forgot about that.
I had a question then. Because
canon.
So I guess the other point that stands, and you mentioned it earlier, Tyler, about having other people look onto Ninjago is good. That can be taken both ways. I agree. Fresh eyes on Ninjago is a good thing. If you know the lore of Ninjago. If not, we get stuff like the Lego Ninjago movie.
Oh yeah.
Which proves that they know nothing about what, the Ninjago lore and importance of, the ground and the characters, blah, blah, blah. But the editor and writer for the Garmadon series, Try, said, well, his name is Try, not Try, Try. He looked into the series, he did his research, and he even stated on the panel, and this is what, made my heart glow. He said the more he looked into it, he fell in love with the characters. And that's when I knew, is if that happened to him, we've got good hands for this comic, because he understands that Ninjago, the characters of Ninjago, are truly special. So
I mean I don't know yet.
About
I'm not
the Ninjago movie.
I'm not ready to subscribe just yet based off that statement, because I'm sure the people who made the movie loved the characters too. However, the thing that I was encouraged by was when the head of Skybound was like, everyone was asked what their favorite element was, and he was like, I understand there's a vacancy for wind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that is some deeper insight. I am encouraged
some deeper lore knowledge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I have a few things to say. Number one, I'm definitely glad, Haley, that you pointed out the discrepancy between a fresh take and a good take, because that is very true. That's important to consider. That being said, I still appreciate the Ninjago movie. I just wish it wasn't how it is, but it is what it is. We have to accept
Imagine
it.
if we got a canon Ninjago movie that took place in the lore of Ninjago, but still was fresh so that people could understand it. But in that,
anyway. So my concern is that
it was an attempted reboot, if I remember right, was it not?
Not a the TV show was always going to continue, but yes, it is. It has no connection. They were clearly. It was a reboot.
They wanted to have the Ninjago name, but exist in kind of the same world as the other Lego movies. And that's where I remember Tommy mentioning that, in the writer's room for this movie, they were saying how they wanted it to be in someone's backyard. And Tommy's like, no, Ninjago is its own place. I'll show you the map of Ninjago. It actually has a lore and whatnot. It's like, no, this is in someone's backyard. And it's all this stuff. And that's when it's you start mixing what Ninjago means. So
you're doing a different, creative.
You're going a different take on it.
Yeah.
That's more of a ninja movie rather than Ninjago.
So my concern is its canonicity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was reminded of this stuff in this conversation. Tommy says it's canon.
Tommy A. and Tommy K.
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't know anything about it. So here's kind of where I'm at. It's canon because he talked to the dude and he says, yeah, I really respect that I got sucked in. Because that's kind of what it seems like to me.
They worked with Tommy Kalmar, who's in the know.
Yep.
And Tommy Kalmar worked with Tommy A. So Tommy A gave stuff to Tommy Kalmar, who gave stuff to them. While Tommy doesn't know what's happening in the comics, he knows enough so that he can say it's canon, or that they can say that it's canon.
I don't know.
But remember, this is kind of like
We're going off the story Bible. That would. That would explain the ability to say
Unfortunately,
when it's
Ninjago
canon
does
or
not have a story Bible.
If they say it's canon, I really would wish that Tommy Andreasen would have at least like read it before it being published. Otherwise,
That would
we
be
will get
nice.
stuff like the little canon inaccuracies in the Book of Spinjitzu, which is considered canon, or them doing jitsu in the air in the Dark Island or stuff like that, which isn't really that bad, but it's like
at the end of the
slight
day, Ninjago
annoyances.
proper has enough plot holes, and we don't consider it non-canon to itself. So I can forgive minor things. Well, I can forgive them. I can forgive them after roasting them live on air for an hour. But it's just kind of it's like if the guy that took Zach's bowl was like, if he had spoken to him prior, if he came up to get candy and Zach gave him some candy, and he was like, I promise I'm not going to come back and take your bowl later. Like, you'd trust me, right? Like, this candy's good enough. I really like the candy. I've grown a lot of respect for this candy, and
I'd
you
be a little
giving it to
concerned
me.
I'd be a little concerned that he brought up the bowl, but
like, ultimately, the only thing you have is your word.
yeah.
The dude, I'm not saying the dude doesn't actually respect Ninjago and its characters, but like, you can respect the characters and whatnot and still miss like some little plot inaccuracy here and there.
Yeah, of course.
Like, unless you have a proper production workflow, it's all just words.
I mean, they do that nowadays anyways. Like, we look at the beginning of Seabound.
I know.
And like, they're right there, like, this is canon Ninjago that takes place right after the island, and it's like they forgot the island even happened.
Yeah.
So as long as there's nothing like, say Kai appears and he's wearing all black, if anything like that happens, then that's not good. But I think that it'll be kind of like the Dark Island, a good story that takes place in this universe that has no impact on the rest of the show, but it'll explore a character in this new age. So
Right.
And the only thing I'm worried about is if Garmadon does return in the Ninjago story, like the Ninjago TV show story, if the personality is the same.
Well, it depends on the kind of story they tell.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily expect him to like. I mean, it'd be nice if he had a character arc in the comic, but I don't necessarily expect him to.
Oh, he probably will. He's the protagonist.
Like, yeah, Samurai Jack was the protagonist in Samurai Jack, and each episode was just of him going to a different place, the Lone Wanderer, and then he leaves at the end. I could totally see Garmadon, the comic series, being relatively episodic, where he's the same at the end as he is at the start.
Yeah.
Is it necessarily what I would want? No. Is it kind of stereotypical of the Lone Wanderer stories? Yes.
Well, I mean, like, the most recent popular Lone Wanderer, Mandalorian, he has a little bit of an arc going.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I mean, I can expect, it's a 5-episode Garmadon story, and it's like, that's it. I would imagine that there's something going on.
I feel like if he just came back and he was a bit of a different character, that wouldn't be a problem for this show either, because it's been so long since we saw him. And I mean, they did that before between like Legacy of the Green Ninja and Rebooted, when we saw Garmadon for the first time again.
Was completely different.
Yeah, so I don't think that would be any kind of problem.
I expect that anyways. I expect the next time that we see Garmadon, he's gonna be like, I don't even know at this point. He'll be very different. It'll be kind of like, you've been doing this the whole time, kind of thing. But we'll see. Because he's definitely not doing anything bad. We would have heard about it if he's doing something bad, at least on
Depends on how bad.
Well, I mean, if he's doing something really, really bad, I'm sure the ninja will find out about it. But yeah. Any other thoughts about the release of the Garmadon? I feel like we were looking into different holes, and then there was one hole that was so deep we just all collapsed into it, and then we climbed out of it, and now we're just continuing on.
I think one point we haven't talked too much about yet is accessibility in the future, and if this will be as rare as like the Dark Island.
That's true.
That's the other good point.
Because I think the printed versions might be, but because it releases on digital, and most major platforms, and from what it looks like, Lego books that release on those platforms stay there for a long time.
Yeah.
Fans will have a way to get them. And also, this is like Skybound. I think also they're also Image Comics. They sometimes do stuff like reprints or collection prints. So maybe you'll get another printed version if this is very successful. So I think it's not going to be the same situation we had with the Dog Island here.
And thank God for that. Because it seems like that was less than stellar.
Oh, yeah. I would say I would recommend getting a hard copy if you plan on wanting to get it, and get it as soon as it comes out, because we don't know how many copies they actually made. I could see this being a rare find for Ninjago fans, but the accessibility of reading should not be a problem because it is online, so we can,
infinite copies.
Pass it around. Infinite copies online. When it's the internet.
Exactly.
So
that's already better than the alternative.
I
don't know. Like, as much as I love, trust me, I love skepticism and being skeptical as much as the next guy, but this is just a neat thing that's happening. It's just cool. Yeah. Especially if we're in an era where, as cool as it would be to have just unlimited budget to get a Ninjago spinoff for every character. Like, I want my Upley spinoff. I want my Dareth and Ronan spinoff. I want my everything. We're in an era where the TV show isn't even being aired.
Yeah.
The future is uncertain. I think we should be happy to take whatever media we can get and just enjoy it if it's good.
And the live stream, it also very much sounded like they're interested in doing more Ninjago comics for different characters or different.
Oh yeah, I could tell just from talking with them that they are very much looking forward to hopefully more stories in the Ninjago world, whether it be with Garmadon or someone new. So, but yeah, it's a very exciting time. And it comes out in April. For those who don't know, April 6th, 2022 is the release date. And then I believe, and I think it's going to be standard comic wise, the episodes are going to release weekly. So
weekly stuff.
So I mean, it's be a week.
Sure about that?
Most comics are monthly normally, but
monthly. Okay.
Yeah.
It's either gonna be. It's not gonna all come out once for sure. But because they said the first episode or first volume comes out on April 6th. So hopefully it's not monthly. Oh my gosh, I sure hope it's not monthly.
It probably is.
Super upset.
I haven't heard of any comics coming out on a weekly rotation at all.
There are some, but it's rather rare, I'd say.
Fair enough. Well,
gotta get that drip feed.
Oh yeah.
Just want to clarify by pass it around. Earlier mentioned in regards to the accessibility of the new Ninjago novel releasing soon for money. What we actually meant was we would pass the link for purchase around so that everyone has an opportunity to access it. And nothing else.
True.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah.
We'll announce when it gets closer. It's going to be fun times all around, us enjoying Garmadon for what feels like the first time in forever, even though it's been 2 years since the last time we've seen him.
For the first time in
a rare Meso singing Frozen moment.
I like Frozen too.
I like frozen pizza, but only after I cook it.
Oh my gosh. Anywho.
Any of you guys read the Spinjitzu Brothers?
Yeah, I
How was it?
First book was great.
How are the cats?
Oh man. I'm gonna be learning cat jitsu soon, y'all. I'm make myself a hood with those cat ears.
You should actually.
I totally am.
Next time we meet up, you should make one for LJ too. I'm sure he'll really appreciate it.
I'll be cat warriors.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
I'll even dress up as that one character. No.
Haley? Do not go down this
Well, it's not a
road.
fursuit if it's a cosplay.
That's
right?
it. We're done. We're ending the friggin' podcast. I'm not talking about this episode. I will burn this building to the ground.
Bruh.
Oh.
See the plugs and end it. And
Seen that movie Cats?
Okay, no, now end the podcast. End this.
That is
We're
what it
done.
looked like,
I will
though.
start
Wouldn't
playing
it
the
be?
music.
It is
I
exactly
swear.
what you would
All
look-
right. All right.
Combination.
Are we good to end?
We are good to end.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening to this episode today. If you'd like more quality content, feel free to subscribe and smash that like button. If you want to go support us over on Patreon, we have a Patreon at patreon.com/the TTV channel, where you can join our Patreon Discord server for as low as $1 a month and have all sorts of fun, epic conversations, as well as be featured in the video. You can also check out the Patreon Minecraft server on the island of Motonui, with more to come maybe one day, where you can play Minecraft and have cool fun. If you want to discuss Ninjago, the books, Bionicle, any other random stuff, you can do so over on the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com, and follow us on Twitter for any video updates at twitter.com/TTVchannel. That is all.
All right. Well done. Thank you.
Tell me when to play the music.
Oh, you're good now, I think.
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Can you actually play music?
I can play the music. You guys won't hear it, but it'll be in the recording.
Ah, all right. Well, go for it.
Done.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today for this episode of NinJAGOcast. Remember, Garmadon, Volume 1 comes out April 6, 2022, in comic book stores and online. Woo! We will catch you on the flip side, y'all. Until then, I have been your Sensei Wolf.
I'm LJ.
I am Messi.
I'm Sakota.
And I'm Starbreaker.
Angelus12 in the chat just had the perfect idea. This is
I'm going to
Cat.
kill you. Kill. Murder. It will be murder.
We're totally doing that. We're totally doing that.
No. Wait.
Hey,
Oh
hey,
shoot.
AJ, I have an
Dang it.
idea.
Wait.
I have an idea, AJ, for a new.
Wait. I'm sorry. I forgot something. Hang on. I'm gonna have to replay the music. I forgot to mention the most important Ninjago novel of all. That's right, everyone. When are we getting a sequel to this novel I found at Amazon, Legend of the Brown Ninja?
Oh, I have that.
Is that really?
And you
Is
never.
it good?
I have that. Yeah.
That's real?
Yeah.
You-
it actually takes
It's
place
real.
during.
You never told me.
Yeah, I read it, and there's actually really cool moments in it, and it actually has moments from Skybound too, or let's say like it
And
takes place after
you never told me.
I
Can confirm there were plenty of awesome times and lots of puffy pot stickers.
To be continued on the next episode of NinJagoCast as LJ strangles Zack to death.